Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the NBL1 Show. Thanks to Coles Express, I'm Megan Hustwaite. Well, the weather outside is cold, but the action is hot in stadiums right around Australia, and we've got so much to get through on this week's show. We had some news last week. The national finals are headed to Western Australia in a couple of months' time. We cannot wait. All the details are on the app and our socials, and we'll talk to Greg Heyer shortly about what it means for our teams in the West. We had the Opal shining across the NBL1 competition at the weekend. We'll ask all of our experts about those players and what they produced. We also had a bye in NBL1 Central. Well, there's plenty to discuss, so let's get into it. Well, some exciting news during the week with the national finals headed to Western Australia, and one person who is very, very happy about that news is our correspondent out west, Greg Heyer. Welcome, Greg. Are you very excited about this?
I absolutely am. I got sent about 1 million text messages asking if that would provide enough motivation for me to get back and play this season. But I'm busy. I'm on this show every single week, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to sacrifice any time. But it's absolutely incredible. I mean, obviously we know last year's fantastic championships. Both the Warwick Senators and the Rockingham Flames won the respective leagues. So I'm excited to see it back out here. The location is incredible. The home of the Joondalup Wolves. It's a renovated stadium. World class maybe is a bit ambitious, but it's certainly a spectacular spot. And I'm excited to see the best talent across the country come down to my neck of the woods, and really excited.
It's going to be so good. When you said you were receiving a lot of messages, I thought people were hitting you up for tickets, which they will. Now, you mentioned lots of talent, which will be coming to WA for the national finals. There's lots of talent in NBL1 West Women's because one team remains undefeated.
Yeah, and that's the Coburn Cougars. Their train continues, and they had a pretty challenging task. There's always that sort of, I guess, story that when a coach is removed, the team gets up, and Perth Redbacks have had a unique sort of couple of weeks. They removed their coach, Michelle Fletcher, and brought in Jason Smith, who used to actually coach the Coburn Cougars a long time ago, and it was Lauren Scherf's second game. And so they prevailed against them on Friday night, and then got another win on Sunday against East Perth Eagles, who have played well this year, but certainly a formidable opponent. And it was back behind Sarah Mortensen and Jessie Edwards. They had incredible weekends. Obviously, Jessie Edwards was with the Perth Lynx last year, but she had 22 points and 19 rebounds on Sunday, and Sarah Mortensen had 22 and 11. So it comes down to this week. They're going to go against the Joondalup Wolves. We know they've already played against each other early in the season, which Coburn prevailed 84-79 then. So that's going to be the game of the week, no doubt about that. Obviously, that's going to be at the home of the Wolves at Joondalup, and talk about anticipation, because I know they'll obviously want to get one back on them.
It's going to be so good. Now, Mandurah went 2-zip at the weekend, and we had a massive milestone for one of the greats too.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting milestones every single week. We know we spoke about Kay Smilovic, who is not only a Mandurah Magic legend, a league legend, but Rachel Helene, the current captain, she accumulated 350 games over this weekend. An incredible effort. She's overcome some pretty significant injuries over time, a couple of ACLs, and that beaming smile. Fantastic to see her play 350 games for the Mandurah Magic, and they went 2-0. Sarah Torina was fantastic, and they brought in an inclusion of a new player from originally from South Australia, who's been playing for the Clemson Tigers over in America, Hannah Hank. She was solid, but they had it was a great weekend. They beat the Willerton Tigers, who are a tough opposition. Obviously, want to play top four. So a really solid weekend and a milestone game. So pleasing to see for Rachel and the Mandurah Magic.
Congratulations to Rachel. There's been some incredible milestones so far this season. We're just so lucky to have the calibre of player and person in our competition right around Australia. Emma Clark, we've spoken about her a lot. She's primed for another big WNBL season. Tell us about her weekend.
Yeah, Perry Lakes Hawks continue to winning, and it's because of Emma Clark. She had an incredible game this week, 33 points, 15 rebounds, but I think it was shooting display. 7 from 8 from the three-point line. You can't go by that. She's obviously going to return back to the Sydney Flames. I know she had a bit of a disrupted start to the season, and this is what you like to see, I guess in the NBL and WNBL off-season is those players that are trying to stake a claim. I know over East there was humongous performances from NBL1 players in the WNBL, but to see, I guess, her growing confidence, if there is a question mark around her game, is her shooting, and to shoot 7 from 8, absolutely incredible. So, good on Emma, and good on for the Pearl Lakes Hawks.
Yeah, great to see Emma Clark working on her game in NBL1 West. Let's go across to the men's action now, because there was so much action literally across the weekend. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, well, you've got traditional rivalries. You had the grand final rematch, and that's where I'll start with. The Rockingham Flames travelled down to Geraldton. It's an intimidating place to play. What a game. It came down to the absolute wire. Malik Munier hit 2 free throws at the end of the game to pretty much get them across the line. And there was a lot of, it was toing and froing left, right and centre. Unfortunately, there was players missing from both sides. Zach Katorna's over in Illawarra on a tryout. Ryan Godfrey with concussion symptoms, he was missing. Tom Jervis never travels on regional trips, so he was missing as well. But that was still plenty of talent. Devondre Walker was limited, had 20 points. They did a fantastic job. Teams are starting to have a unique approach. But Marshall Nelson missed 2 free throws at the end of the game to seal the deal. Off the rebound, Malik Munier gets the ball and ends up, sinking 2 and crushing the Flames' dream. So now they've lost 2 games. This hasn't been done for a very, very long time, and a bit of a redemption, you could say. Obviously, the Flames overcame the Bucks in last year's grand final. So, really, really positive game. And then we go to Stirling and Joondalup. Their rivalries. That's a bit of a rivalry in the city of Joondalup there. And again, unfortunately, players are missing. Jay Thwaites had a wedding, so Cody Ellis was there. Ethan Elliott cut his hand, so he's unavailable to play for time. But Joondalup got up big. That was a 30-point win, and they've been inconsistent for the last few rounds. So, really big win for them. Again, Quentin Dove was special for them. But Brian Michaels, that's a name I haven't been mentioning this whole year. He's been not playing to the level that he's accustomed to or would like to. He was solid, 18 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists against his old club. So certainly, a good thing for him, I guess, to start getting a bit of a pep in his step.
Lots of news headlines in the men's conference, as you mentioned, uncharted territory for the Flames. But let's finish with the magic. Was there some magic at the weekend?
Unfortunately not, and ever so close. Now they sit at 0-9, and they took the Willetton Tigers literally to the very end. It was an overtime game. Willetton Tigers ended up winning by 2 points. Mandurah came out hot. They were up by 24 points at the start of the first quarter, at 1 point, sorry. But Willetton just willed their way back to it, and it was behind Darnell Hoskins. He scored 35 points, maybe inefficient from the 3-point line from 6 from 18, but he won't die wandering. He'll get it up, and Gorjak Gak was solid. Import Daquan Abram from Magic. He was spectacular. He had 38 points and 6 assists off shooting from 6 from 14, but would have been nice for them to get, I guess, the monkey off the back and finally get that win. And it would have been an incredible sort of win for them against Willetton Tigers, who have championship credentials. So I guess another week for them. But good to see that, still a team that hasn't won a game all year is testing these high talented teams on the top of the ladder. And that's what you need across the league. So pleasing to see for that result as well.
Great to be brought up to speed with all that's happening in NBL1 West. Thanks for your time, Greg, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Meg.
Time to focus in on NBL1 South, where the Opals were shining at the weekend, and to talk us through it is Matt Hickey. Welcome, Matt. Some massive performances across the round.
Yeah, another huge round of NBL1 South across both men's and women's divisions, so let's get stuck into it.
Let's start with the Opals players, because members of the traditional 5-on-5 and 3x3 were doing big things right across the state.
Yeah, the big names were certainly getting amongst it. We'll start with Alice Q next. She was fantastic. She's back, which is great to see in the NBL1 after some time out of Australia playing, which she tends to do, and she comes back and she's always a powerhouse when she does come back. It was a tough weekend for the Nunawading Spectres, 2 losses, but she did manage to have 27 points in both games across the weekend, 27 in 27 in that first game against Geelong on Saturday as well. So a super impressive weekend from her, and it's just great to have her back in the NBL1 South.
Yeah, it sure is. And in the Spectres colours, she looks right at home. Let's talk about Marina Whittle. She was such a huge part of the Hawks title last season. How was her weekend?
Yeah, another massive performance, especially on Sunday night. So Saturday was a bit of a tough loss for the Ringwood Hawks, and Whittle was probably still their best player, but it was a tough all-round game for them. On Sunday, they come out against Keilor. They take home a big 79-65 win, and Marina Whittle, 37 points, 17 rebounds, and 4 assists. She's having another fantastic year. She'll again most likely be in the MVP discussion, but she continues to go from strength to strength for the Hawks.
Monster numbers from Marina. And then Keely Froling, she is just so consistent. As we know, with the Tawns, they had a big weekend, and of course in recent years they've had Kelsey Griffin and Mariana Tolo play for them alongside Keely. Keely's sort of the experienced head for the team this season, and they had a big road trip to Victoria.
Yeah, they certainly did, and you talk about MVP discussion. Keely Froling's another player that is going to definitely be there currently and towards the end of the season as well. Her biggest performance of the weekend came on Sunday against Sandringham. It's a solid Sandringham unit as well, and Launceston won 84-79. She had 39 points, 13 rebounds, and a pretty handy 7 steals as well, which some players don't even get to 7 steals over the whole season, let alone in one game. She's averaging 28 points and 10 rebounds on the year. Another fantastic performance from a fantastic player.
Dominating in Victoria. Perhaps a sign of things to come for Keely this year. Let's move on to the men's conference now. We spoke about Alice starring for Nunawading, and on the men's side of things, there was also a player that stood up big time.
Yeah, Will Carrius, he's having a really good season, and he's had a great weekend for the Nunawading Spectres. They split the weekend, so on Saturday night they went down to Geelong 90-82. He had 29 points and 10 rebounds off the bench. On Sunday he shifted into the starters against Dandenong. They had a big 14-point win. They cracked triple figures scoring for the game, the Spectres. He finished with 30 points, 8 rebounds in 27 minutes. He's averaging over 22 points a game on the season, so a really handy pickup for the Nunawading Spectres.
When it comes to big weekends across NBL1 around the country, Ben Eyre had one of the biggest.
He certainly did. So Friday night was a massive, massive game, and I think last week it was the game to watch on the men's side for me, and it was just a huge contest, and it was a big, big win as well. So Ben Eyre just led the squad brilliantly. They got a win over Mount Gambier, 95-84. He finished with 39 points on Friday night, 4 rebounds and 3 assists, just to chuck that on top because why not? And then on Sunday, they also had a win over Northwest Tassie, 100-68. He had 27 points, 6 rebounds and 4 assists in that one. So tough to get much better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's finish with Latmayan because he shone as well. He had 35 points. I want to know how many threes were made in that.
Yeah, he was absolutely locked in from the land of plenty. He had 7 makes from downtown, 13 rebounds to go along with those 35 points that you mentioned. Sadly, his team went down. He couldn't get Bendigo over the line against a really solid Diamond Valley lineup. They went down 93-107, but he's having a great season, and it was a very, very impressive night from him, keeping them somewhat in the contest.
We're coming to the middle stages of the season. There's crunch games everywhere you look. What are you looking at ahead to this round?
Yeah, so in the women's division on Saturday, you've got Bendigo versus Geelong, so that's first versus fourth. Bendigo still haven't lost a game. They sit 10-0 on the season. Geelong putting together a really handy year as well, so that's one to keep an eye out for. I think that's going to be a really interesting clash. And then on the men's side of the game, you've got Diamond Valley against the Sabres. Diamond Valley, they 6-7-4, Sandringham 4th, 8-4. It's going to be an interesting battle, and I don't know if you can see, but that's my dog in the background, he's also very excited about what's going on over the
Is your
weekend.
dog under the curtains? I thought it must have just been the breeze, the breezes flowing through the ladders of NBL1 South. We'll let you get back to your dog. He's very excited, or she is very excited about the action coming up this weekend. Thanks for your time as always, Matt Hickey.
Always a pleasure, never a chore. Thank you very much.
Time to talk all things NBL1 North now with our expert, John Guana. Welcome, John. There has been a winning streak come to an end and perhaps a winning streak start up in Queensland.
There is a winning streak that has come to an end. There's one undefeated team left across both competitions, with the Darwin Salties taking their first loss of the season over the weekend. They had that tough road doubleheader. They went down to Mackay on Friday night. They snuck away with a 1-point win in that one. They did have to back up the next day, and they took their first loss of the season in Rockhampton. It was a dominant win by Rockhampton. They won 88-68 against Darwin. The doubleheader, Sam Bowman, Lara McSpadden dominated the glass in that one. Sam had 22 points and 22 rebounds. Lara McSpadden had 22 points and 19 rebounds. Between the two of them, they had 19 offensive rebounds, and they helped outscore Darwin in the paint 50-18. Salties come down from the undefeated ranks with their first loss of the season. Opportunity to bounce back, though, but that just leaves Northside Wizards as the only team in either competition, and I'm talking about the women's side of things, as the undefeated team. Everyone else outside of Northside has picked up their first loss of the season. On the other side of things, it was the Rockhampton men getting on the board. They were able to pick up their first win, 99-89 against Darwin over the weekend. They really won it. It was a tight battle in the third quarter. Rockhampton won that one 30-16, and that was the difference in the game. Newcomer Malcolm Bernard, he just rejoined Rockhampton after playing up here in 2018. He came up from the south playing with Casey. He had 26 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 assists in his return to the NBL1 North competition. Nico McCulloch had 20 points and 6 assists, and Shearmaker also had 16 points and 15 rebounds. That Rockhampton team, I was shocked that they hadn't won a game yet. They're a really good group. I'm glad to see that they got on board in this one, and let's see if they could start to build a little momentum.
Yeah, really good weekend for Rocky. And just on the Wizards, who you mentioned, John, the women who are now the only undefeated team left in NBL1 North. Loved seeing, and we love Courtney Woods, we do talk about her a lot, but her grandparents have come out from Seattle and we're there at the weekend. So lovely for her to see them and for them to see some NBL1 North action as well.
Yeah, and Courtney was awesome on the weekend. I got my stats here: 35 points, 4 rebounds, 13 assists. A huge win for Northside. They got that 110-94 win over Ipswich. I guess the family gives you a little extra motivation, but Courtney's been balling all year. No different this weekend with her grandparents in the building.
Now, she won 2 titles with Townsville in the NBL1 last season, and then, of course, the WNBL1. She's moved clubs for this NBL1 North season. But let's talk about the reigning champs, because they are in a bit of trouble.
They are in a little bit of strife, and Steph Reed and the crew are probably going to crush me for saying this because I saw them on the weekend. They dropped 2 of 3 on a 3-game road trip down here in southeast Queensland. They dropped a really tough one on Friday night against Gold Coast, 67-57. Kate Reese had a huge game for the Rollers in that one. Steph Reed was great as well, 27 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. But she didn't really get a lot of help. Alex Fowler's come back into the group, and I think reintegrating her will certainly help in the long run. But Alex got back to the States on Wednesday and flew down from Townsville to southeast Queensland and played 3 games on the weekend. Yeah. Not a bad season debut for her, a double-double, 12 points and 11 rebounds. But it was in a loss to the Gold Coast. Then Townsville backed it up with a win against North Gold Coast. And then just on Sunday, they dropped a big one to the Southwest Metro Pirates. And in that one, again, it was the offensive struggles for Townsville that did them in. Over the weekend, they scored 57 against the Gold Coast in a loss. Then they scored 73 against North Gold Coast in a win and only 50 against the Pirates. So offensively, the team is struggling a bit. I think they were pretty happy with where they were defensively. The most points scored against them was that 71 by the Pirates on the weekend on Sunday in that final game. 3-game road trips are really, really difficult. There's no doubt about it. But Townsville's at 5-7 at the moment, sitting in 10th. So I think they have the talent. They certainly should be in the 8. And speaking to the group, they're really confident that they can make the 8. But at this point in the season, you'd love to be better positioned. 5-7 in 10th is a bit surprising to myself and quite a few people across the NBL1 North.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have had some massive changes, haven't they? Obviously, Shannon Seaborn's not coaching them this year. We mentioned Courtney Woods has gone on to the Wizards. And then you think of someone like Alana Smith, who was such a surprise inclusion for them in the second half of the season. And she started the WNBA season really well. So some big changes for Townsville, but I'm sure they'll get their stuff together. Let's move back on to the men's action because we need to talk about the Gold Coast.
Yeah, Gold Coast is absolutely rolling in this one. They've now won 7 in a row. They are in a great spot, and leading the way, as he always does, is Jason Kadee. That was the game of the week. I was there on Friday night, and Jason put on an absolute clinic. 30 points, 8 rebounds, 16 assists.
Oof.
And the thing that always impresses me about Jason is it doesn't feel forced. It really comes natural to him. Early on, it was Todd Blanchfield carrying the scoring load. He had a massive first quarter in that game, finished with 21 points. Elijah Camu had moments. Preston Legasic as well in the third quarter had some hot shooting, but really orchestrating everything was Jason Kadee. He was on absolute fire. His shot was falling. His creativity is always there. And, you know, we've talked week in and week out about MVP candidates. To me, Jason Kadee, if he's on the court, he's an MVP candidate, and his play thus far this season is certainly proving him to be one of the candidates. But Gold Coast, 2 losses on the season. They're sitting in third spot, 7 wins in a row, absolutely on a roll. A team that everyone is gunning for because they're the defending champs, and they're playing like it.
Yeah, they are. And adding Todd Blanchfield into that lineup while Kadee is firing has been magnificent for them.
I should also say, you know, they did it without Tanner Krebs as well. There's a few rumors around that they may be adding some more NBL talent if Tanner can't get back on the court. So something to keep an eye on as well. But, man, they're doing this without Tanner Krebs the last couple of weeks as well. So really, really impressive from Gold Coast.
Yeah, you're spot on, John. Let's finish with Rip City because we've been talking about Kuat Noi the last couple of weeks and it's all come together for them.
It certainly did. It was not easy, though. They had to go to overtime. There was 2 overtime games up on the Sunshine Coast in the women and the men's. But Rip City picked up their first win with the reigning MVP back in the lineup on the weekend, 104-91 against Spartans. It was a really massive game. Fabian Krislovic for the Spartans tied it up with a couple free throws with a few seconds left. Kuat Noi had an opportunity to win the game but missed the layup with 2 seconds to go. But in overtime, it was all Rip City. Brandon Wood finished with 32 points, 7 rebounds, and a couple assists. Kuat Noi had a massive double-double, 23 points and 18 rebounds. And my guy, Verl Williams, coming in off the bench, making an impact, 21 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. This Rip City team, you know, we know that they've struggled the last couple of weeks. We said it, though, that they have so much talent. It was inevitable that they were going to get a win and get some things going here. It's a great win for them to get started. They were tested. They were pushed to the limits. They were able to get past that massive challenge from the Spartans, win it in overtime. Let's see now if they can start to build off of this big win.
And that's the kind of win that you do build a campaign and a runoff, isn't it? That's for sure. A confidence booster as well to get some momentum started. John, always love catching up with you. Keep up the great work. We look forward to your commentary at the weekend and talking to you again on the NBL1 Show next week.
Thanks, Megan. I love it too. Thanks for having me.
Well, it was another massive weekend of NBL1 East action, and the stat lines were massive. Jacinta Glovin, could they be the biggest we've seen yet?
I think you might be right, Megan. I mean, NBL1 East this season had started off with a bang already, but the numbers just continue to climb. And as we enter round 10, so we're just over halfway of our competition, but there were lots of big stat lines from some emerging talent and some long-standing talent as well.
It was a great mix of talent that produced these massive numbers. So let's start with the women's action because there were definitely some familiar names there.
Yes, absolutely. The usual suspects were out back in force again in this round 10. 26 games in round 10 as well, so plenty of opportunity to get some big stat lines up. Starting off with Violet Morrow from Bankstown Bruins, a name that I'm sure you're familiar with now. We featured her a couple of times on the NBL1 show. And versus the Newcastle Falcons, she had 35 points, 10 rebounds and 4 assists. And considering the Falcons are one of the best defensive teams in our competition, I think that's a really, really good stat line. Then we had Lizzie Tonks as well, representing the Canberra Nationals, with 31 points and 6 assists on her home court at Belconnen versus the Inner West Bulls. But it was the biggest week for our resident Opals in the NBL1 East competition, with Loz Nicholson and Shyla Hill leading the way, both having double headers as well in round 10. Now, Shyla Hill dropped a cool 41 points, shooting at 50%, along with 7 assists in a tough game against the Sutherland Sharks. But in the very same game, you had Loz Nicholson with 43 points, shooting at 65%. And interestingly enough, none of those 43 points were three-pointers, which I thought was quite unusual given Loz is such a great three-point shooter. But she did hit 17 from 19 from the free throw line. And then on the former day, she actually also had a triple-double for the weekend with 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists against the Hills Hornets.
Wow, that is unbelievable. And what an offensive display from two of the best guards going around. They were championship teammates in the WNBL just a few months ago. And who knows, they could be representing the Opals in the FIBA Women's Asia Cup in Sydney next month. But massive weekends from both of those ladies. Let's move over to the men's side of things now. We had Ben Henschel on the show last week. He was a terrific guest, and it's fantastic to see the COE talent teenagers playing in this league. And there was a game at the weekend where we saw a veteran player shine, but also Ben, one of the young guns too.
Yeah, so Ben is a future Perth Wildcat, and what I really like about these COE athletes in the men's and women's teams is that how well they can carry themselves on and off the court. Ben having a great interview with you last week, as you mentioned. But in this game against Illawarra Hawks, very high scoring, very tight game. COE winning that one 106-100. But Ben came away with 34 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals, shooting at 50% as well. And in the same game again, we had a former NBL star in Tim Conrad, who's suiting up for the Illawarra Hawks once again. He had 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists at 53% against the COE. So it was like two sides of the same coin in that game, and it was probably one of the best games of the round.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's just great to see such experienced players bringing their wares to NBL1 and then also having it as a pathway for literally teenagers that are starting out their pro careers. Now, down the road, we had a game between the Falcons and the Bruins.
Yes, that's right. Up or down the road. My geography still isn't the best, given I've lived here a long time now. But it was out at the Bankstown Bruins home court where they hosted the Newcastle Falcons. And Miles Cherry for the Falcons dropped 27 points and had 20 rebounds with 69% from the field. Now, this guy, Miles Cherry, literally lives in the paint. So of his 148 shots he's taken this season, he's only taken 11 outside the key. So definitely got his game down pat under the basket, and he's probably one of the most consistent performers of the league this year.
Cherry ripe stats from you, Jacinta. It's what we love to see. Let's finish with the Spiders because they have had an unfortunate string of very close losses.
Oh, it's just been a heartbreaking round 10 for the Spiders. They suffered quite a 50-point loss, I think, against the COE on one day, and the next day really stuck it to the Maitland Mustangs at home. And they performed very, very well, but unfortunately the Mustangs clinched a 2-point win thanks to Will Cranston-Lowndes' hot hands in the dying seconds. But unfortunately for the Spiders, this is the 4th time this season that they have lost a game in the dying seconds, and hopefully this will just bring some character building for this squad to take into the next season, and I should say for the rest of the season too.
And hopefully they can hang on and win a thriller in the back end of this season. They've certainly earned it should they get there. The celebrations will be worth tuning into across our socials. Jacinta, thanks for the chat. Enjoy the round coming up, and we look forward to checking back in with you again next week.
Thanks for having me as always, Megan.
Well, it's been another big show. Great to catch up with all that's happening right around the country. Enjoy the weekend action coming up. And don't forget to stay tuned on the NBL1 app and the socials, where there will be highlights aplenty. Enjoy the basketball, and I'll see you again next week.